Good morning. Welcome to the Surrey Board of Trade. We will begin in 2 minutes. Thank you for joining the Surrey Board of Trade. We will begin in 2 minutes. We will begin in 1 minute. Thank you for joining the Surrey Board of Trade this morning. We'll begin in 1 minute. Good morning. I'm Anita Haberman. I'm President and CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. I'm also an honorary captain of the Royal Canadian Navy. Welcome to the third installment of the Surrey Board of Trade's 2022 Surrey Entrepreneur Showcase series, featuring, this time, our Indigenous entrepreneurs. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in the traditional territory of our Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Kwantlen, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kaikut, Semiahmoo, and Tawasin First Nations. As well, I acknowledge the Inuit and Métis Nation peoples who live and work on these territories. They have a significant connection to the land and water that surrounds our great city of Surrey, and they are an amazing and important part of our economic development journey. Please help me thank the sponsors of this event. Without sponsorship, Surrey Board of Trade events simply would not take place. I'd like to thank our supporting sponsor, Kwantlen Polytechnic University's Melville School of Business, our community sponsor, Diversity Community Resources Society, and our media sponsor, CBC Vancouver. Our Surrey Board of Trade Progress partners, our ongoing partners, are the law firm of Fasken, Scotiabank, the Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, represented by SNF Benefits, BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada, and Scotiabank. As well, I'd like to recognize Western Community College as our progress partner as well. A government representative that is joining us this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, City of Surrey Councillor Linda Annis. Everyone, Indigenous-owned businesses are important economic development pillars for our country, for our province, for our regional economy, as well as for the City of Surrey. Indigenous entrepreneurs contribute millions of dollars annually and provide jobs to Indigenous and non-Indigenous employees across Canada. They play a vital role in our economic ecosystem through innovation, service, and at the same time, raise awareness about Indigenous culture, heritage, and tradition. How did our Indigenous entrepreneurs navigate the challenges during the pandemic and into this new economy that we're living in with all of the economic challenges that we are all facing? We're here this morning to find that out, to engage with them. And so, first of all, I'd like to hear from Sharyar Gori. She is the Business Center Manager, our Progress Partner for the Business Development Bank of Canada. Over to you.
Thank you, Anita. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me this morning. What is truth and reconciliation? This event is an example of reconciliation in action. Thank you to Surrey Board of Trade for using their platform to showcase Indigenous entrepreneurs by giving them time and space to share their stories and their entrepreneurial journey. Thank you to each and every one of you for showing up today to hear how these Indigenous entrepreneurs are leaders in their community by creating economic prosperity and paving the way for future generations. Indigenous entrepreneurs make up the fastest growing entrepreneurial segment in our country. And these four amazing panelists today speak to the breadth of industries where Indigenous entrepreneurs flourish and thrive. For 30 years, BDC has been supporting entrepreneurs, Indigenous entrepreneurs to grow and scale their business. And as Canada's only development bank, through our client diversity strategy, we have been focusing our efforts to increase our reach and have greater impact on more Indigenous entrepreneurs. We have a wide network of account managers all over the country who support our Indigenous business owners. And we have a tailored loan solution that provides working capital loans for up to $350,000 for existing businesses and up to $250,000 for startups. There's no processing fee for the loan and no maintenance fees. We offer preferred interest rates, and BDC donates a portion of the loan interest to one of the selected 3 Indigenous community organization charity foundations, or one of the loan recipients' preferred registered Indigenous charity. Before you leave today, my call to action for you is to connect with these entrepreneurs on social media and use your platform to showcase some of BC's finest Indigenous entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your sponsorship to Business Development Bank of Canada. And Sharyar, thank you so much for your words this morning. Everyone, please help me welcome now your Master of Ceremonies for this morning. She is the host of CBC Vancouver News' flagship dinner hour program at 6 p.m. She's a passionate journalist with a love for telling community-based stories and giving citizens a voice. She is this year's winner of the Canadian Screen Award for Best Local Host. Please help me welcome Anita Bathe. Anita, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anita. It's always a pleasure to be here with the Surrey Board of Trade. I love your organization. And welcome to all of you this morning. It's a pleasure to be here as your Master of Ceremonies of today's Surrey Entrepreneur Showcase Indigenous Entrepreneur Panel. On behalf of the Surrey Board of Trade, I thank you for supporting Surrey's business organization. Now, the Surrey Board of Trade, in case you don't know, is Surrey City building business organization where business happens. They support and attract business through government, advocacy, international trade, business support, and a concierge of connections. They are making Surrey an opportunity city, a great place to live, learn, work, and play. As we all know, the road to success is always challenging. Starting your own business can be manageable, but of course, extremely daunting. Like many other small and medium-sized businesses, Indigenous-owned companies have unique challenges, of course, and many stem from systemic racism and discrimination. Now, this Surrey Entrepreneur Showcase series featuring Surrey Indigenous entrepreneurs will tackle the struggles, the trials, the highs and lows of an Indigenous entrepreneur's journey, and how they exude resilience in the face of adversities. Now, each path is different, and this morning you're going to hear the direction these successful Indigenous entrepreneurs have taken, what risks they've taken, what strategies have worked, what didn't work. You're going to hear all the things about their business and hopefully be inspired. It's pretty much guaranteed, actually, that you'll be inspired this morning, I should say. This morning's panelists represent diverse sectors. We have digital technology, tourism, marketing and public relations, farming, and brewing. They'll provide their perspectives on how their journey to success started, and then it's going to be your turn to ask questions. So we are really hoping for your participation today in the dialogue after the panel presentation. So please start thinking of the questions that I, your moderator, can throw to these amazing entrepreneurs today. I'm sure you'll have lots of them, and this is sort of your chance to really pick their brains so that you can feel inspired and learn from them. Okay, with all of that, it is time to start that inspiration we keep talking about. I want to introduce our first speaker. James is the former chief of the Klahoose First Nation. He is a digital specialist, a leader, and president of Indigeknow. That is an innovative digital company, and he is going to lead us off today. Welcome, James.
Wonderful. Okay. You can't hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you. So what I said was I feel good. I come from this place and we're all related. And that's my message that I bring to the business community. I let folks know when I'm working in communities that I'm Indigenous. My dad comes from Klahoose First Nation and Treaty 4 territory. But I like to start off with culture and who I am and where I come from. And so I do introductions that way. And I always like to talk in the language. But innovation is that that language is Ijutham, which is Coast Salish, and it's not Cree like in my dad's community. And but what I wanted to say was today I'm coming from the Algonquin territories, and this relates to the story that I'm about to tell you. And that's what they call Ottawa, Ontario. And in these territories, I'm a visitor and doing business in their territories. I want to recognize that today. And today I'm at the Assembly of First Nations Special Chiefs Assembly. And the reason why I mention that is because it gives you an idea of where business is going with Indigenous communities. And you realize that, and this is the Indigenous lens, is that it's not a typical path. It's not a a linear way where you set out some goals as a business and you target those goals and you achieve. This is a very long and daunting travel. I'm 51 years old. My kids are all grown up now. And so now I'm lucky I get the chance to actually explore my business passions and ideas in the tech sector. But I'm actually doing it in a way that's quite unique. I'm a former chief. I was a chief of Klahoose First Nation. And I was, in that leadership role for 6 years. And I learned a lot of things in that leadership role. One of the things was where you're going to do business and where it's going to help is making sure that you get to the community level and making sure that you're in that space where people can understand what it is that you're trying to achieve and what it is that your company, the message from your company. So I live in that world of chiefs, and that's why I'm here. I represent the Dene Nation. I do business with the Dene Nation. I also do business with the province of BC. I do business with governments. I'm a contractor, entrepreneur, and it's that path of when I was chief, I was able to turn my experiences and my growth as that leader, and I've turned it into a business opportunity that now it allows me to travel. It allows me to explore my passions, which is in the tech sector and bringing Indigenous communities at par with the rest of the communities that we know of, and that's really my goal. But it's funny because I end up doing data governance. I end up supporting governments. I support National Chief Gerald Antoine. And it's just a real interesting role that I found that not a lot of people are in this space. So I'm in a niche kind of role working with chiefs, with governments, and it's a path that I find very interesting because folks often tell me, James, I don't know what it is that you do, and sometimes I think to myself, yeah, what is it that I do? Because I'm all over the place, and here I am in Algonquin territory, talking about tourism. Funny enough, the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada is working with the Dene Nation. So I'm here to help support that. I'm here to help guide that process. And most people think, well, don't you have to join a company or join a group in order to be in that role? But no, I'm here as James Delorme in my company. And it works really well because folks want to see me doing this work for them. And that's the uniqueness that we have as Indigenous people. We play various roles within our background, but the key thing is, and going back to what a lot of people are talking about now, which is reconciliation, truth and reconciliation, people are starting to understand the Indigenous lens is very much about a holistic 360 point of view. And so there's a lot of places where I fit within government, within corporations, as a leader, speaker, and just a liaison really to help business move along. It really came from that Indigenous lens, and society is getting on board now as being an ally, as being a supporter of our Indigenous communities. And the first step to that is being an ally. So call is today are that you're trying your best to learn more about the Indigenous lens. And I just encourage you to keep doing that. Continue to be that ally to help support Indigenous endeavors because we need that. We need that support. We need that guidance, and we need that mentorship. So I really have to give thanks to my elders and my knowledge keepers over the years, and the folks that still continue to give me good guidance. For instance, Cookby Frank from the Bonaparte First Nation took some time. We spent 2 hours this morning talking about traditional knowledge and how that relates to business. And it was 2 hours out of my day is huge, but it had so much growth for me. And it happened just on the fly. And it wouldn't have happened if I didn't come to this assembly. And I put my own money out to be here. And that's the sacrifice you need to make in this, in this modern age of business. And that's what I'm doing. I'm committed to that. And I'm committed to support my family too, the people around me. And so I see the other folks on this panel, I just want to say thank you to taking time out on your busy schedules to do this. Anita Huberman, big fan, of course. So we can't do any selfies, but and oh, Jason, yes, thank you. I will shoot my contact info, my website on the chat, and I would love to hear from you. And let's talk some more, but I'll keep it short and say, Amot some swagan. That means I feel good, and we'll say Chetam Quiname, which is we'll see you later, but I'm here for the duration. I'll take any questions, and thank you, Darian, good friend of mine. Love working with Darian, and thank you, Anita, for hosting. Woohoo.
Thank you so much, James. I'm looking forward to chatting with you more in our panel discussion after. Our next speaker is the founder and owner of Locality Brewing, BC's Field to Glass Farm Brewery. Please join me in welcoming Melanie McInnes.
Hello there, this is Melanie here. Thank you very much for having us here, and thank you for hosting, Anita. And James, it was great to hear about everything that you're up to. I am the founder of Locality Brewing, along with my husband, Andrew Hamer. The idea of Locality Brewing really came from the farm in which I grew up on. We live on a 100-acre farm out in Langley Township. And growing up on this land, it has always been topographically challenging. There's a big water body that runs through it. We now call it the lagoon. It's very hilly. There's some old growth forest that surrounds that pond. And from a farming perspective, it always worked for dairy, in which I grew up with. But when I was about 12, we sold the cows in quota, and we were trying to decide what to do with that land. We tried many other things since then, including we planted cottonwood trees, and we tried horse boarding, and it was kind of every day, every dinner was around how do we keep the family farm. So keep that in mind. Also, when I was about 12, I went through a very interesting discovery. My great uncle gathered us around, as every year we'd have a gathering, and he informed us he had actually written a book outlining our family history, including the strong Métis heritage and what my ancestors had been through. It was quite eye-opening, because up to that point I hadn't understood that or known that. And at that point he urged us, he was dying of cancer, and he urged us to get our Métis citizenship, and that it was very important that we look back into our spiritual practices and learn. That was a lot, because no one actually, we had essentially lost our Métis heritage through over the years. Métis were known as traders, and it was from the Louis Rebellion at the time. That's changing, but there was a stigma about being Métis. So if people could hide it, they would hide it. So over the years, fast forward, I tried to discover that heritage. I did become a citizen, but I found it very difficult to really understand or even find people to communicate with, to learn more. And I did find that there was an overall eye rolling anytime I mentioned the Métis heritage, which sounds crazy, but that's what happened. So going into owning a business on a farm, on particularly a land that I love and I wanted people to experience and see, my husband and I looked at ways of connecting with that land, and also seeing what could naturally grow in this topographically challenging land, and work with the land rather than forcing upon it traditional farming methods. So we like the idea of permaculture farming, working with the trees and the hilliness of the land, the water, and planting in a way that would work with the different areas. So we started with planting 1 acre of barley. We were told you couldn't grow barley in BC, or well, in BC you can, but particularly Langley wasn't an ideal place. We planted hazelnut trees and cider apple trees. We have chickens, and we planted hops. This was in 2016. It was far from our mind that our dream was to create an area where people could come and have a field the glass experience, either through cider or, well, the dream was the beer, but we just thought that was so far-fetched that we didn't allow ourselves to believe that. And we continued, and we planted 1 acre of barley. And at that time, we didn't have any equipment for harvesting that, and we were kind of told constantly that it wouldn't work. So at the end of that, we went and harvested it with hand scythes that we got from the BC Farm Museum. And we actually harvest the grain like you would where there's no equipment. So you're hand thrash the barley and separate the grain from the shaft, and then dry it. And we got it tested, and it met malting specs perfectly. Actually, it had the protein was low, and we decided to continue on that path. So from there, we planted 6 acres of barley. We got a thrashing machine from the 1930s. We upgraded to a couple decades later, or centuries, and started harvesting the barley. And from there, we built actually, well, first we started floor malting and then built a malt house from scratch from different, my husband engineered malt machine basically. And we were able to create beautiful malt. So the next step, we realized maybe we could try this brewery. Unfortunately, by the time we were in so deep, then the pandemic hit. And we were faced with that, wow, we're gonna open this brewery right in the middle of the pandemic when people can't get outside. And it was really scary. And we, at that point, we just felt like we had to proceed. So we proceeded with that and opened the doors, and people came, and we were really excited. And through our story, what we want to do is continue to show people that connection to those ingredients, to the ingredients that's in your drink or in your food. There should always be a connection to the land. For us, everything centers around why we're doing this is the showcasing that land. We want to connect people to that and connect people to one another and create that sense of community. It is an outdoor space. We're hoping to one day have an indoor space as well. And we really enjoy sharing that with everyone. Thank you very much. And I would be lying if there wasn't many challenges behind that, but we've had a great time. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Yeah, it sounds like you had challenge after challenge, but you kept going, and now you've got this successful business. So thank you for sharing. Our next speaker is the Principal and Director of Strategy at Jelly Marketing and PR. Please welcome Darian Kovacs.
Hello, I just want to acknowledge Melanie, first of all, your rum barrel aged vanilla porter is delicious. If those are interested in venturing out to Langley. And Melanie, what is the TV show that is filmed there? Because not only can you go and get an amazing beer, but what can you go? It's the lot of people go there from all over because
When Calls the Heart.
When Calls the Heart, that's it. So not only can you see the sets of When Calls the Heart, but you can also get a delicious beer. So Melanie, thank you for sharing. So I, like Melanie, am also a citizen, a Métis citizen here in BC. Anita, I want to say thanks for that land acknowledgement at the beginning. I've actually never heard a land acknowledgement, which not only acknowledged the land, but acknowledged the Inuit and Métis people who work and live here as well. So thank you for that. That was really special. So I grew up, tell you a story, grew up quite close to my grandpa. He used to make porridge in the mornings when I'd go stay at his place. He lived on a farm in Bradner, and it was amazing. He was so good. He'd make a big porridge every morning. So even now when I eat porridge, I think of my grandpa. But when he passed, we as well discovered kind of our Métis citizenship and connection, which we discovered he had these things called scripts, which was the documentation given to people when they could either choose a couple options when they moved them off the land. So if you want to look into the history of it, it's fascinating. And right now, if you venture out to Fort Langley, to the actual fort, in the great room at the fort, in the upstairs area, there's an amazing kind of educational video art experience you can go to about the Métis people and kind of the history of the Métis people, the art of the Métis people. We are known as the flower bead people. So a lot of great beading and flower beading there that you can check out. So it's very, very cool. I ended up starting a digital marketing and PR firm about 10 years ago, working with brands like Lazy Boy and Lego and Spence Diamonds, which has enabled us to work with some really, really cool brands around the world, and then Church's Chicken. And growing from there, we realized there was this massive void of people trying to learn this industry, what we like to call the new collar industry. So there's blue collar and there's white collar, but an industry where, you know, the role of an SEO coordinator or a digital ads coordinator never existed, 5-10 years ago. And so we set up a school about 5 years ago to begin to train people to do that, to become digital marketers professionally. So we worked with groups like Google and Facebook and Hootsuite to set up the certifications. And so we've been doing that. And then we realized that there wasn't a really good diverse voice when it came into the marketing industry. Sadly, just even a couple of years ago, we did an audit. Every single marketing award in Canada, as of a couple of years ago, had only ever had white males on the jury, ever. And so we thought, we launched this publication called Marketing News Canada, where we had the chance to interview people like Seth Godin and Malcolm Gladwell, Guy Kawasaki, who was the first chief marketing officer of Apple, and have them on the show to talk about what does it mean to be a marketer. And so that publication, we just hit our 400th episode of that podcast a couple of weeks ago, which is really exciting. And as of yesterday, we published a book called Marketing Mentors. It's on Amazon.ca, and it is 100 summaries of those marketing mentor moments that we had. So we took 100 of the episodes of the 400, maybe not, you can't say the 100 best, but 100 highlighted episodes, and summed them up in a book that launched yesterday. But through all this, I have to say, I'm getting to work with brands and getting to be Indigenous in this, and getting to show people and educate people and rub off on people that being Indigenous doesn't just mean, putting a flower on it or a feather on it, and, there's an old Portlandia skit where it's like, put a bird on it. And I think sometimes in some cases people think, well, if I just put a feather on it, it'll be fine. Or there's the other term where you can rent a feather, and you could just hire someone to kind of, do some work for you for a moment to show that you've kind of reconciled with the Indigenous people. But I think what we're trying to see with whether it's training people to go into the industry, or whether it's working in the industry and getting to be a leader and getting to be an influencer, to show that, hey, as Indigenous people, it's not just, hey, we're Indigenous, and so thus look at us now and look what we've done, but it's, hey, we can be really good at what we do. And we have these amazing superpowers. And James mentioned that, but the ability to tell stories. We've got a rich heritage of being mentored and mentoring others, and so the whole idea of setting up mentorship and doing mentoring, but these two superpowers, if used well and used for good, those with great power have great responsibility, can make a big difference in the world. And so I think that's been a mission of us for a while now, where how do we continue to run our agency really, really well, and at the same time running the academy and getting more Indigenous voices into marketing. So there's a fellow Vancouverite, Ryan Reynolds, known for his acting, but fun fact, he also owns an ad agency called Maximum Effort, and he launched a program in the States a few months ago called Creative Ladder. And so they've been working really tirelessly to get more diverse voices into the ad industry. And so the work we've been doing up in Canada has been to get more Indigenous voices into the marketing industry. And so our friends at Best Buy have partnered with us. So every one of our Indigenous students who go through our Jelly Academy program get a brand new laptop and cell phone. And so I think, to kind of reiterate, there's an amazing campaign, a company called Cheekbone Beauty, run by Jen Harper, an Indigenous, really awesome woman. They ran an ad campaign called Write the Story, and it was RIGHT. So writing the story of who Indigenous people are, and kind of reshaping our message and reshaping what our future can look like. Because I think the news and the media are so full of sadness. And even just recently, what happened in Winnipeg, it's full of sadness, what happened to what we're now calling the Buffalo Woman. And so I think if we can write the story on the other side of people who have kind of pushed through and who have been resilient, who are getting mentor, who are providing mentorship, and amazing organizations that are out there that are coming alongside and providing that support. So I think there's a lot of hope, definitely a lot of challenges that go along with it, but there's a lot of hope as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Darian. We really appreciate it. Our final speaker is the owner of Gulf Island Seaplanes. Please welcome Allison Evans.
Hello there. It's always a horrible thing when you have to follow all these very eloquent speakers, and I get so nervous. So you might notice that I'm reading a little bit of this, but my name is Allison Evans. I'm an Indigenous entrepreneur and co-owner of Gulf Island Seaplanes with my husband, Sean Evans. I'm Gitxsan. I was born in the Hagelgut Village First Nation, also known as Hazelton, BC. although I've been living in the Nanaimo territory of Nanaimo, BC for the past 17 years. We started Gulf Island Seaplanes in 2014 and have built a successful business that we're extremely proud to call ours. Gulf Island Seaplanes has grown a strong reputation for excellent customer service, safety, and attention to detail, all at competitive prices, with scheduled flights from Gabriola Island to Vancouver YVR and many chartered flights throughout the coast of BC. As you all know, this was going to change drastically, and everything that we had built and worked so hard to achieve would hang in the balance in March 2020. In March 2020, aviation would come to a standstill and Gulf Island Seaplanes would be forced to close the doors and cancel flights in an effort to protect the small communities that we support. And without knowing what the future holds, we began monitoring health announcements and managing our new reality. At the forefront would be our concern for family, community, and our employees who feel more like family. The roots and strengths of Gulf Island Seaplanes lies with an amazing team of carefully selected and incredibly strong group of employees. Our staff is loyal and we are proud they choose to remain with us through thick and thin as we navigate numerous changes and obstacles these past few years. We value listening to all voices within the company and even our passengers, and spent many hours at our kitchen table discussing options in an effort to minimize one of the most difficult times in airline history. Previous to the pandemic, over the 8 years we had been in business, we carved out a niche in the industry through a traditional aviation path until the pandemic hit. And once that change happened, it was a time for reflection for me. And I focused on two different things, which one being my family and the culture and all of the struggles that were amplified for Indigenous people during the pandemic. And two was our business that needed some new ideas if we were going to survive. I started thinking about the two together and soon began researching Indigenous tourism and ways we could possibly support or even create cultural experiences for domestic and international tourists. Tourism is thankfully slowly restarting, and we are back and passionate for the opportunities ahead that have been redefined by the pandemic, and our desire to succeed for our communities, our employees, and all Indigenous people has never been stronger. Indigenous tourism in BC was a rapidly growing industry pre-pandemic, and the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada has said that the Canadian economy is rebounding, but it will never fully recover until tourism recovers, specifically supported in large part by Indigenous tourism. ITAC research suggests that 85% of international tourists want to experience authentic Indigenous tourism in Canada, and that those experiences are much wider reaching than the obvious and include a variety of cultural learning opportunities. ITAC also believes that Indigenous tourism is reconciliation in action by creating the opportunity to share knowledge, history, and lived experiences with a broad group, promoting connection. Canadians have been passively curious about Indigenous culture, and that curiosity has been ignited into a thirst to learn and know more about Indigenous culture and people and grow understanding. At Gulf Island Seaplanes, we see these opportunities and take seriously our role in promoting and showcasing the positive successes and resiliency of the Indigenous people. Gulf Island Seaplanes strive to support and create experiences to become a world leader in building tourism.
Allison, I'm just going to interrupt you there for a sec. It seems like your audio is gone or muffled.
Oh, is that better?
Oh, now that's better. We're back.
Oh, okay.
So it was about the last minute or so. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Just that we're sorry. It's about cultural tourism and Indigenous tourism and creating, something that we can share with the world to show how positive and uplifting our history is and remains to be, and the resilience of the people that live on. So our goal is to create, a way to share this tourists and domestic and international tourists that come to our fleet currently consists of the Havilland.
Sorry, Allison, your audio is bad again. You might be covering your microphone maybe, or
Oh, I don't think so.
so now it's fine. When you talk to us, it's fine.
Okay.
And now it's good again. So
Okay.
whatever you're doing now, keep doing it and we'll let
Okay.
you go again.
So our plan is to create cultural experience through flight. So, and to share stories that we can, that promote, like being able to, share with people that don't sorry, now I'm all thrown off. Sorry. Our focus for our second season, we've started a base in Vancouver Harbor, which is like a very special spot for us to be as a small operator, for us to have, been able to secure a position there and be able to operate unique tours from there is a very large thing to be proud of for us as a small business. So we're looking forward to our next season coming up in the spring, where we will be developing cultural scenic flights that will showcase stories and storytelling from the area. We had one of our planes refurbished and painted, and it proudly shows our Indigenous logo in the harbor, which is, generally when you go down to the Vancouver Harbor, you see a lot of the corporate blue paint jobs all out there, which I think that ours stands out proudly Indigenous amongst all of that. So what I think that we're just trying to do is create something different, create something that is a platform to share stories and be a part of this positive narrative that is sharing cultural history and the direction and resiliency of the people that are on these lands now. Sorry, I got so off track. I've lost track of what else I wanted to say. Sorry.
No, we apologize as well, Allison. I'm sorry that we had to interrupt you, but your presentation was great. So thank you so much. And we'll get back to you with questions. So don't worry about it. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, all of our panelists. I do hope that all of you watching are feeling inspired, because yes, it is time to move on to those questions. So please do send your questions into the chat. We really want to make sure that we get them to our panelists. If I'm unable to get to your question, Surrey Board of Trade will hope to get a response to you afterwards. Okay, let's kick this off. So I think I'm going to ask all the panelists to turn on your cameras. Do we have everybody? All right, there you all are. Okay, so let's start with James. As a leader, you talked a little bit about government and how much you work with government, but as a leader, what do you expect from your government to support your business and other Indigenous startups?
Super great question, and I get this one a lot, actually. Interesting enough. Working with, say, a national group is usually recognized in a huge way. They, nation to nation work. It's a lot of governments do that, and which is wonderful. But where there's a break in government is they tend to go with any normal citizen that's, say, a solopreneur, somebody who's got a SME, small business that they're trying to achieve. they're probably going through a government process of applying for projects for or the project they're applying for funding to help them get on their feet. And as everybody knows in this call, when you're a startup, say, or you're trying to get a business going, you really need capital. You need something incentive to actually keep you in business, because 9 out of 10 businesses fail because in the first 6 months, you just don't have that, operating budget to be able to get, your hopes and dreams off the ground. So where the government could greatly, and I used to be on the Small Business Roundtable, and I pushed this a lot back in the day, is, that get those barriers out of the way. So there's barriers that are preventing small business owners from getting funding, from getting those exposure to those larger markets. And I think that's where the rubber hits the road with government, and allowing organizations that do that community level funding, allow them to have more flexibility in the work that they're doing, so that they can actually get those capital funding opportunities out the door. Thank you.
Does anyone want to jump in here? Melanie, I saw you taking notes. Maybe you have something to say.
I definitely agree with it's definitely the cash flow for those first 2 years is really tricky. And I know for us, being a farming business and a brewery, we're very seasonal. So as much as I can forecast that we're going to be going through a tough 4 months coming up here, it is very stressful with the rising interest rates that are currently happening with the loans that we do have. And then also looking for funding and knowing that we're going to be taking on more debt at higher interest rates is extremely scary.
Well, and Allison, can you talk about that sort of risk that you have to take, right, financially with any sort of business?
Yes, for us, obviously any risk that we take is very expensive. Airlines are not cheap to run. So we have to be really careful. And I think that we've had a lot of really great people that we've leaned on to ask questions and mentor us through all of that. And I think that that's one of the biggest secrets to our success so far, is that we've really surrounded ourselves with the right people to give us good advice and help us making those decisions.
Okay, and we have a question from the audience, I guess we can call it, for Darian. They want to know what the name of your school is, but then also maybe you can answer a question about sort of tips for growing your company, because it sounds like you've really taken it off.
Jelly Academy is the name of it. So like the agency is Jelly Marketing. So we really are big fans of jelly. And if one day you come to our office or visit, you actually get little jars of jelly, and they're pretty awesome. And there's a secret website on it where you can actually order peanut butter and bread, and we'll mail you peanut butter and bread. But I'd say one of the greatest opportunities right now is the program called CDAP. So the federal government put $4 billion into a pot, which is pretty awesome. So whether your business has made $500K or less, you can take advantage of an audit and $2,400 grant. Or if your business has more than that in revenue, $500K or more at one point in the last 3 years, they give you $15,000 for an audit and strategy, $7,300 for hiring a youth 18 to 30. And BDC is in the house. They give you up to $100,000 interest-free loan for 6 years, which is pretty awesome. So it is a kind of like an Oprah style thing where they're like, you get some money. Now here's some more money. Here's some other money. And it is called CDAP. And we actually are one of the only Indigenous advisors in the marketplace right now, which is really exciting. And so it's been really great getting to help businesses get the money to build a strategy, build a plan, take some time to look at the competitors and kind of stop, collaborate, and listen, and then get some money to hire a youth 18 to 30 to execute some of that work.
Awesome,
I wanted to say that I also took the Jelly Academy, and I loved it, and I've learned so much. I can't even believe there's so much to marketing every day. So we really appreciate that. And I am looking forward to hopefully taking advantage of the CDAP for next year.
Melanie, what is something that you've learned in terms of marketing and marketing your own business?
A lot of what I didn't realize was particularly with the website, was those in terms of creating authority with your website is having all those backlinks and having authoritative other sources linking to you is very important. So that's actually probably another thing the government could do. Anything that showcases Indigenous entrepreneurs with any sort of links to their websites, to their social media, is a really great way to strengthen their legitimacy.
Okay, and James, can you talk a little bit more about how important your network has been? You know, you kind of touched on that and all the meetings that you have, but why is it so important for someone who's starting their own business to have this network, and if they don't have it already, to build it?
Yeah, critical, and this builds off, you know, everything that everybody's talked about is when you get kind of this granular level of working with folks, and it's tough. You know, I remember not that long ago for myself, before I was chief, never thought that I could actually achieve what I have achieved today. And it's a lot of times it's just your own self-esteem and you're growing up, how you grew up. And, you know, there's a lot of my peers that grew up in really tough situations in poverty. I came from poverty. I didn't come from, you know, a good, and our elders, the resilient in the work that they do. And one of the things that I really look upon is our resiliency as Indigenous people. It really comes out in our networking, because we connect together, we understand each other, and that translates to business, funny enough. And I go back to that one statement that I made about the holistic approach, because we don't see things in a linear way. We see the whole entire family, or the roots of the tree, if you will. And that is where the success of my business comes from, because I used to think linear. I used to think colonized, you know, that I was chasing the dollar, and that was the most important thing. But what I found was those relationships that I built, those partnerships that I built, were actually in that Indigenous lens, and that was creating more opportunities for myself. And it was less pushing for opportunities and letting those opportunities come to me. I know that's a tough one. It's hard to, you know, because we're all so used to chasing after business opportunities. But we also have to remember that relationship you have with somebody, it could be anybody on the street, that could be that next person you're going to partner into a business with. So relationships are always key.
Thank you, James. And we have one final question, and it's from the audience to Allison, sort of on this theme. Are you a member of Indigenous Tourism BC? And if so, how has this benefited your airline?
Yes, I am a member of Indigenous Tourism BC. That has been a resource that I can't say enough about. They're a fantastic group of people that work very hard, and they really understand what you're going through as an Indigenous business owner, but especially in the tourism sector. We got help from them during the pandemic in many ways, like through the Tourism Relief Fund, through advice, through just being feeling supported by everything that they do there, and always giving us a positive, uplifting feel to anything that we were asking them to do. One of the newest things that I just attended their AGM, and a big thing that is going on right now through them is the regenerative tourism, which is more of a full circle idea, like what James was speaking of, you know, not just the end dollar, but also promoting like a whole circle of what you can do with your business, to support other businesses, to support people, Indigenous youth, all sorts of avenues that you can take through that. So I think that, you know, Indigenous Tourism of BC has been around for 25 years. They just had their 25th anniversary, and it was an incredible thing to be a part of, because I think a lot of people don't realize how much this has impacted Indigenous businesses in general.
All right, Melanie, James, Darian, Allison, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I'm sorry we don't have more time to ask you some more questions, but that's all we have for today. So again, thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to Anita Haberman.
Thank you so much, Anita. And it's always great to see another Anita. And thank you so much to CBC Vancouver for your partnership in our Surrey Entrepreneur Showcase. And specifically for today, as we showcased our Indigenous entrepreneurs, the challenges and opportunities that they're facing, and also ensuring that we're all working together. As we conclude our program, I'd like to thank the sponsors of our event this morning. They are our supporting sponsor, Kwantlen Polytechnic University's Melville School of Business, our community sponsor, Diversity Community Resource Society, and our media sponsor, as I mentioned, is CBC Vancouver. Thank you also to our progress partners as well. Just a reminder that Surrey's business community is giving back to the Surrey Food Bank tomorrow night on December 8th from 5 to 7:30 p.m. at the Sheraton Hotel at our seasonal sizzle business reception, our Christmas reception with over 500 business representatives, where we will be donating non-perishable food items and other items that are needed for those that are in need here in our city. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you to our panelists. And we look forward to working with you to ensure that Surrey and BC are economic opportunity zones. And of course, our new cabinet was announced just recently for the BC government, and we all need to work together to drive the economy forward. Thank you so much. Make it a great business day. You may leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.